Hello students, in this lesson we are going to learn on genetic engineering under chapter 13 genetic technology. Now genetic technology involves two processes, which is genetic engineering and also biotechnology. So this is what we are going to look into in this subtopic. So without further ado, let's dive into it. So if let's say you have to go to the market, okay, and get tomatoes. So, you first time going, you want to choose the tomato. So there are two kinds of tomato here. All right, so one is rather small, less juicy, and looks like it's going to get spoiled very easily. And the other generally looks more juicy. Okay, lasts longer and sweeter and also larger. Which would you pick generally? But what if I told you the better looking one is actually genetically modified? Would you still pick it? Well, that's the debate that are still ongoing on the effect of genetically modified food to humans. So we are going to cover it. Okay, we are going to study further in this lesson. Okay, let's look at the learning standard. The first one is to describe the terms genetic engineering and also genetically modified organism, GMO. Now, what are these two things? And the second one is to be able to explain the application of genetic engineering in the production of genetically modified organism, genetically modified foods, and also insulin. Genetic engineering is the process of manipulating the genetic material of an organism by removing, changing, and also inserting individual genes into its DNA. It involves the transfer of genes from the DNA of one organism into the DNA of another organism. So this is also known as a recombinant DNA technology because the new modified DNA is actually formed from genetic engineering. Okay, so this technique usually involves the manipulation of genes to alter the genetic content in an organism. All right, so genetic engineering is actually beneficial trait of an organism that can be transferred to one and another. Genetically modified organism is an organism whose DNA has been modified through genetic engineering. Okay, so this organism, they have a recombinant DNA. The original traits in these organisms are altered by inserting target genes from another organism into their DNA. So examples of GMO are mainly crops, livestock, which are genetically modified to increase their quality and yield. And in most cases, these GMO have been altered by inserting genes from the DNA of another organism such as bacteria, plants, virus, or animals. So we have here a few of application. Okay, we have here genetically modified cow which produces milk, okay, which does not contain lactoglobulin, which is a type of protein that causes allergy among some children. And goat are also genetically modified to process the human gene which codes for blood clotting factor. So this is used to treat hemophiliac patients, since hemophiliac patients can't really have their blood clot. Okay. Okay, when we talk about genetically modified, we have genetically modified organism, animals, and also plants. So for plants, these plants are actually produced for scientific research, okay, to make vaccines, to produce high quality and high yield crops. Some are purely for ornamental purposes. For example, flowering plants are genetically modified for their flower color, fragrance, shape, or plant architecture. But in the field of agriculture, the genetically modified crops are usually more tolerant to resist infection. Okay, they are more tolerant to pesticides and herbicides. They are also more tolerant to unfavorable climate or weather. Now, genetic engineering is used in tissue culture where all the beneficial genes from various plants are isolated and then transferred to the desired plant. And in this way, the hybrid plant will be of higher quality and of good breed. So we have here genetically modified paddy. Later we will see, okay, that the paddy itself contains vitamin A. Okay, so it gives a proper vitamin or nutrition to humans. So these are other examples of genetically modified organism or genetically modified plants. So we have seeds that are now drought resistant, okay, a transgenic papaya which are more resistant to diseases. They have genes from virus that encodes protein in the virus outer coat. So these papayas are, to say, better than the uh, original self. Okay, and we also nowadays have seedless watermelons. So seedless watermelons are actually genetically engineered. So there are other examples of genetically modified organism. Okay, so we have here bacteria. Bacteria are actually the organism that can be used to produce enzymes, amino acid, flavorings, and other compounds used in food production. These bacteria are modified to produce hormones such as growth hormone and also insulin. Other uses include bioremediation, where bacteria are used to convert pollutants into less toxic form. Then we also have genetically modified viruses. These viruses are altered so they can be used directly to treat diseases and to produce vaccines. And lastly, fungi, genetically modified fungi, which the fungi are modified to produce large complex molecules for use in the production of food products, pharmaceuticals, hormones, and also steroids. So as of 2016, two genetically modified yeast are used in the fermentation of wine and its commercialized production in the United States and also Canada. So they are also used in the production of biofuels. So genetically engineered or genetically modified food refers to the food that has foreign genes from other plants or animal inserted into its DNA. Hence, genetically modified food is food that is derived from organisms that have been modified genetically. Yeah, obviously. Now, examples of genetically modified food, we have here maize, paddy, wheat, tomatoes, eggplants, and whatnot. So this technology has produced foods that have a consistent flavor of and of high quality as well as resistance to herbicides and also pests. So let's look at one by one a few examples that we have here. So the first one is genetically engineered rice, or we call it the golden rice. Okay, it has additional vitamins in it. These genes from daffodils are inserted into this genetically modified rice to enable the rice to produce more beta carotene. Beta carotene is a little bit orange in color. So this beta carotene is then converted to vitamin A in the body. So genetically modified rice is actually a rich source of vitamin A which reduces night blindness. So the beta carotene is produced in the endosperm of the rice. So this prevents its loss during milling stage whereby the husks are removed. Next, we have genetically engineered oil palm. Okay, so here they altered the fatty acid composition. Now, oil palm has been genetically modified to improve the fatty acid composition of palm oil by lowering the amount of saturated fatty acid and also increasing the oleic acid content in the mesocarp oil. So this research in Malaysia is actually carried out by the Palm Oil Research Institute of Malaysia. We call it PORIM, P-O-R-I-M, and later the Malaysian Palm Oil Board, MPOB. Next, we have the genetically engineered pineapples. So they are actually rose gold pineapples or pink pineapple. Okay, they are most sweet. So this pineapple has also been genetically modified to produce a pink pineapple with extra sweetness. The genetically modified pineapple is called rose gold when young pineapples produce a lot of pigment called lycopene, which is responsible for the red color in tomatoes and watermelons. As the fruit matures, the pink lycopene is converted by enzymes into yellow carotenoids. So in genetically modified pineapple, the level of this enzyme is lowered to prevent the lycopene's conversion. So this causes the pineapple to develop a pink color and also to make the fruit sweeter in the process. Alright, next we have genetically modified soybean. So herbicides are used in agriculture, alright, kill not only the weeds but also the crop plants. So to prevent this problem, a gene from bacteria is inserted into soybean to make it resistant to herbicide. Okay, herbicide means the weed killers. So this gene produces an enzyme to break down herbicide molecules in the cells so it will not harm the soybean. Thus, the soybean becomes tolerant against the herbicide and can survive the use of weed killer. So genetically modified soybeans are mainly used as livestock feed. They are also used in food products such as tofu, soy sauce, and also emulsifier in ice cream, chocolate, and margarine. So basically, genetically modified soybeans are herbicide tolerant. Okay, so there are the pros and the cons of genetic engineering. So here we have the pros is that it overcomes worldwide food shortage by producing high quality transgenic crops and also livestock. It also reduces cost of food production, increases the nutritional value of crops, reduces problems of crops related to pests, it reduces usage of pesticides and also increase the production. Alright, reduces the price of food, thus increasing food availability. So we would have enough food worldwide. But the cons are that, okay, it actually endangered natural species. Okay, there is a slight possibility that foreign gene in genetically modified food may be transferred to humans, for example, antibiotic resistant gene. And this may have adverse effect on human health and also genetic material of human in the long term. Now, let's look at the production of human insulin. Human insulin has been successfully produced by using genetically modified bacteria. The gene responsible for producing insulin is isolated from the DNA molecule in the Langerhans cells of the pancreas. The gene is then inserted into the DNA molecule of the bacterium called E. coli or Escherichia coli. The bacterium contains a recombinant DNA with the human insulin gene. So this bacteria is then cultured in a suitable nutrient medium in the laboratory and then it grows into human insulin. Now let's look at the steps of how the production of insulin is carried out. Oh, before that, before genetic engineering, where did insulin come from? Yeah, so they come from pigs and also cows. Okay, let's look at the production of insulin. Firstly, we have to isolate the DNA with gene to code for insulin by cutting it out using a restriction enzyme, forming sticky ends. Then we extract the plasmid of the bacterial cells and cut it with the same restriction enzyme, okay, forming sticky end as well. Then we insert the gene for insulin into the plasmid using DNA ligase enzyme to form a recombinant DNA plasmid. Then we insert the recombinant DNA plasmid back into the bacterial cells, forming a transgenic bacterium. Then we can culture and reproduce the bacterial cells containing the recombinant DNA plasmid in a fermenter to produce human insulin. We can also then extract the insulin produced by the bacteria cells in the culture and then purify it. Insulin is used to treat diabetic patients. Now, the bacteria are actually grown in large tanks until there are millions of them. So all the plasmid will be busy making human insulin to help treat the diabetic patient. Well, genetic engineering is progressing. We can now grow new body parts and soon donating blood will be a thing of the past. But will we go too far? What are the potential problems with genetic engineering? People have concerns. Why? That is something that we can debate about. So the possible risk of a genetically modified food is that the insects develop resistance to the pesticides producing genetically modified crops. And we also may have herbicide tolerant crops may cross-pollinate with weeds, okay, and they may produce super weeds. GM food also may cause allergy to humans, harm to wildlife and beneficial insects. It may reduce effectiveness of pesticide as insects become resistant to engineered toxin, and therefore it may also cause loss of biodiversity. So the ultimate fear is that there is no stop into genetic engineering. People are always going to try to create something new, and genetic engineering is the best technology that we have today in making our life better. But how far will we go? That's the question. Now, let's check our understanding. What is the meaning of genetic engineering? Genetic engineering is a gene manipulation technique to modify genetic materials of an organism to produce new combination of genes. Now, what is a transgenic organism? Take a moment to think. So, transgenic organism is organism that carries recombinant DNA of foreign gene in all its cells. Now, another question. Why is genetic modification more advantageous than traditional breeding? We have answers here. It leads to higher yields. It involves the transfer of genes within the same species. The desired changes can be achieved in one generation. And lastly, the techniques involved are very simple and not costly. So which one is it? Yes, the desired changes can be achieved in one generation. Next question. Which human hormone is the first hormone that is produced through genetic engineering in bacterial cells? Quite easy. It's either estrogen, thyroxine, or insulin. Yes, it is insulin. And what are the advantages of genetically modified food towards human life? Now you can take a minute or two, pause the video, write down your answer, and then you can check. All right. So the advantages of GM food is actually it increases the shelf life and quality of the food. It increases nutritional quality and also health. It increases quantity of agriculture products, and it will be able to produce crops that are resistant to herbicides or heavy metals. Last question. Why a plant variety which is modified by genetic engineering to tolerate herbicide can be a threat to the environment? Pause the video, take a minute or two to get your answers ready, and then come back to check your answers. So, The answer is that it is difficult to curb the growth of a plant variety which tolerates herbicides. Stronger herbicides will be needed to kill it. The plant can mutate to produce stronger variety. The gene resistance to herbicide may be transferred from this plant to wheat by pollinating agents. So this situation can actually create superweeds. Now, new herbicide has to be used to kill the superweed. Therefore, farmers will have to always use herbicide, and wide usage of herbicide will actually threaten the environment. So we don't want that. The end. So we are done. I hope you have learned as much as you can from this subtopic. Thank you.